to be here because the alternative isn't. We're sitting at this table, it's good to be here.
We're alive here.
We're ready to go.
Yeah, so I'd like to call to order this Lisbon Town Council meeting for October 1st, 2019. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Somebody's got a hot one again.
I understand that it might have something to do with the electrical, being so close to the microphones.
Is that what it is?
I think it could be.
Interesting. Ready, set, go.
One day we'll figure it out.
Either way, we won't have much noise,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
Ready for a roll call?
Yes, please.
All right. Counselor Ward.
Here.
Counselor Kobe. Here. Counselor Brunel.
Here.
Counselor LaRochelle.
Here.
Counselor Albert.
Here.
And Counselor Lunt.
Here.
Next item is good news and recognition.
Who wants to start us off?
I will if nobody else. The last weekend we actually had a employee recognition, I guess, barbecue, if you want to call it that, at Beaver Park. And I want to thank Diane for actually really pulling a lot of that together. And there's a few of us councils are there actually flipping burgers and doing things. And I just want to thank all the town employees that did come out. I think they had a good time, hopefully, and hopefully there's more things coming in future years that we can kind of build off it. And the ones that did not go, hopefully we do still appreciate the service, and hopefully next year you can attend. And I think it was good. I mean, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to it, but there was some games and prizes and a little bit of food, and it was beautiful weather, so I guess we can't ask for much more. But again, thank you for all the employees for doing what you do.
I couldn't have said it better.
It was lots of fun.
It was.
Everybody had a good time. They were talking about it the next day.
Good. Glad to hear that. Anybody else? Good news recognition?
Diane and I attended Saturday morning that same weekend, put on Spectrum and, is it Rebuild Maine?
Yes.
Rebuild Maine. They had 50 volunteers for Mr. Hool that lives out on Ferry Road, renovating his home and making it so he can actually better habitat it. I mean, the fact is he hasn't had a working bathroom, need a roof, and all these things. So they have a goal to do 50,000 houses, I believe, in something like 10 years.
Wow.
And we had a local participation, so it's a pretty cool event.
That's awesome.
Thank you for being there.
Yeah, no doubt. Anybody else? Anything? Okay. I think we're ready for the next item.
We have no public hearing. It will be the audience participation and response for agenda items.
At this time, anyone in the audience who would like to come up and address anything on the agenda, feel free to do so now. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on.
Next is the consent agenda. Any counselor wishing to have any item removed may do so now. Seeing none, Order 2019-193 to approve the municipal accounts payable and payroll warrants. Number 918-2019 for $5,743.25. Number 925-2019 for $8,613.18. Number 190926 for $182,795.57. Number 1909W2 for $17,806.68. Number 1001-2019 for $967,780.18. The school accounts payable and payroll warrants. Number 1014 for $355,000 for September 17th, 2019, and the Seniors Plus Memorandum of Understanding for October 1, 2019 through September 30th, 2020.
There's one more.
Yeah, there's one more on E.
Oh, and the other authorization to accept prepayments on fiscal year 2021 tax commitment.
Big one. I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Thanks.
Do we want any discussion about anything? Everybody understand the Seniors Plus memo? Yes. Everybody
That's
had
the
time
same
to look at
agreement we have.
it. Same old stuff. Yeah, okay, good. All right, cool. All in favor?
6-0. Order passed.
Next item.
Under council orders, orders, resolutions, and ordinances, Order 2019-194, the plow truck bid award for the new plow blades.
Randy Sear, Public Works Director. We sent out requests for bids for the plow blades. Basically what I was doing is ordering what I need to just make the plow blades usable for this year, and then ordering another set for spares for every one that we have. And the reason, and also that the plow blades were the upgraded version from just a regular plow blade or the carbide blade that we've been buying. These blades are supposedly going to last 5,000 miles, which would probably get 2 seasons out of a blade. The only reason why I ordered another one per truck is if it gets damaged, broke, or something happens to it. We requested bids from 3 different companies: Allied Equipment, Jordan Equipment, and Viking Cibes or Kives or however they pronounce it. Only one company got back with us with the price. And Jordan Equipment was the only one that got back to us.
And what was that price? For
And your recommendation is?
Well, I'll give it to the one person that gave us the price. Like I said, I think it came to a total of what, 26?
$20,336.07. Typically, we don't buy them in bulk like what we're doing this year.
Right.
We buy them as we need them, and it doesn't ever come to council because it never goes over that threshold. But because he wants to buy them in bulk, that's why we're here tonight.
I'll make a motion for discussion.
Discussion, I'll second it.
Yep.
Okay, let's dive in, please.
Yep. So you're talking about the cutting edge.
Yes,
basically,
that's
what
correct.
we're doing.
It's
So
the cutting edges for the main and the wing.
Yeah.
The wings are not the real carbide, the expensive ones. It's just the mains, which are the ones that
so people understand basically if you're following a plow truck, it's what's sparking underneath the road when you're going by. It's when you're plowing snow and there's sparks going everywhere.
Right.
That's actually that edge wearing down. And so the new ones are actually designed in a way that, well, I guess the question is, if they're not wearing the blade, are they doing more damage to the road?
Nope.
Because usually it's one or the other, right?
No, it's the design of the blade. The design of the blade has a large carbide on the bottom,
Okay.
then it's fluted, and it's got a rubber in between.
Yeah.
And it's fluted, it goes up, and then it allows snow to come through and cool the blade down,
Gotcha.
which has a lot less wear, because the sparks you see are from the heat. So what it does, and then there's a cover plate on the front of that. So there's actually like 2 blades in one. And that's, there's double the material there.
I guess the question is, are they more susceptible to damage? I mean, hitting manhole covers or potholes. Not that we have any in town, but if we were to, Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it was my experience when the first time I ever used them was at the Turnpike Authority.
Yeah.
When I plowed for them, and I was on a truck that had one on from the previous year, jumped in the truck and worked all winter long, and when the truck was parked, it was good for the fall next year. So they wear unbelievably well, and they buy them all the time. They've been through countless blades. I've done my research. I've talked to John Cannell. I've talked to Mark, which is the purchasing agent, and I've talked to the foremans over there, and we tried to get the same blade.
Yeah. What's a yearly? Do you know what we usually spend yearly on cutting edges?
I don't know. I came in February. All that stuff was already bought, and we didn't buy any blades from the time I got here till spring. So
Just on the general parts and maintenance, probably. And you think you're going to get a couple years out of these, probably?
if not more.
I'm going to devil's advocate here and ask the existing, what we already have, do we have what's on the trucks and backups, or no, we only have what's on the trucks?
Well, what we're going to do is the truck, there's like 2 trucks that need replacement right now.
Okay,
From last year, the other four plus the loader are fine.
right.
Unless, we're getting a new set of, obviously, with the new truck, and then the 211, if I buy another truck at auction, we're going to end up using all the gear off of that because, the ones that, from what I'm understanding, are left-handers that are going to be auctioned off, so obviously they're all pointing the wrong way.
Right.
We'll take everything off of the 211 that we have now, and we'll put it on that truck.
I see.
So we only need 2 setups right now, and the rest that we have, we're going to wear those out. And then I bought replacements for those.
Right.
Oops. And then a spare for all of them.
So from a pricing perspective, because of the bulk, you feel like we're getting more value. I just want to understand why we're going at it a different way this time.
That's just my way of trying to get things done and having things in stock.
Okay.
You know what I mean? These blades are going to be stored inside in my stock room in the back.
Right.
So it's not like they're going to be outside where anybody can help themselves. They're going
No, sure. No,
they're going to be inside.
Right.
And they come in 4 and 3 foot pieces,
Mr. Chair, Lewiston does an annual bid the same way,
Okay.
just for that reasoning.
Thank you. I needed some context.
And it's, when it's down, if it's broken, you have one to be able to put it back on. You don't have the downtime versus actually having to source it and get it back on the vehicle. That's the intent.
No, I can certainly understand that. I just wanted to see what we had working with on our existing right now, and if we had anything in reserve already that might not have been these
We
carbides.
have no spares.
Yeah, that's
what
what I
we
thought.
have on the trucks is that's it.
Okay.
We don't have a
We don't wanna-
spare piece.
We don't want to be in the middle of a situation where we have something go
I
down.
think I have 17 nuts and bolts. That's all I got.
Not gonna be enough,
those
Randy.
The other day.
That's not going to do it.
I found them the other day just by chance. But
That's not going to do it. Thank you. I appreciate the context.
I have a follow-up question, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair.
Please.
MMA does an annual bid on plow blades. Do they stock these when they source it, or is it just the generic?
not sure. I didn't. This is the first I heard of the MMA.
I know, because I know annually Lewiston does our own specs as well too, so my understanding is what we're actually buying and putting on Lewiston's vehicles aren't what actually AvCog, I'm sorry, AvCog actually sources. If it's supposed to be coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Excuse me.
I didn't know if they were on them before we actually considered. The reason I say that is because they go through a bid process and I don't know about the pricing. My concern here is, first observation, I wasn't under the impression that we actually were doing bids for 5 days. In this case here, this bid went on a Friday and we gave somebody until the following Wednesday to actually respond. I have no issue with the response. It's the lack of, and one of the criticisms that I hear from our finance committee in Lewiston on a regular basis is why? We're asking too short a period of time to be able to respond associated with that. I know Viking Sieves, being as local as they are, they had to have missed it. Did you get any feedback from any of those folks?
From what I gathered, from what Ray gathered, they didn't have the blade I wanted.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair, and I sent you, before I came here tonight, there's a company, Jermar? He actually manufactures what Lewiston puts on because they're a more specialty type blade for the longer lasting associated. They're supposed to flex when they actually hit different contours and parts of the road, and they're manufactured for what we have for equipment. Something to be considering down the road if we're going to continue doing our own bid. But I would look at what AvCog is doing in the future to be able to see if it's something that we can benefit from their pricing.
Right.
Because they're buying for the 37 communities versus us doing our bids by ourselves.
Right. And I don't know if those are just the regular carbide or just the regular non-carbide.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
you
don't
can get this.
have the
Yeah.
clues what they're buying, Randy.
And the other one, the other one we're trying to get away from is the solid piece, the one long solid piece. We're trying to get away from those, just because they're hard for one guy to handle. For one, you know, when you're changing them out, let's say everybody's out, they break it, they come in.
I got nobody to be able to help put it back on.
Unless the mechanics are there, and then if one mechanic's not there and there's only one, so it's him and a driver. So,
Right.
So the other ones come in segments. You know, you got your 4 foot and your 3 foot pieces.
I would ask just in the future that for anything from the town manager, we give at least a minimum 2 weeks before a bid actually is open. In this case here, I don't say that if it was going another 5 business days, we might have gotten a better response. I can't say, because in this case here, it's literally 3 days turnaround, because we pushed something on a Friday, how well did it get received? If it was out of stock, like Viking says, that's great. I would just like to know how
If it was out of stock, or they just didn't stock them.
Don't stock it.
That particular blade.
Yeah.
There's some companies that don't have it.
Yeah, no,
They're a specific blade, and I think they're, because, you know, they are a little more expensive. I think at that point, some people carry them, some people don't. But when we sent this out, Ray asked them if the turnaround time was fine. Everybody didn't have a problem with it.
okay.
So, I mean, if they would have told me,
It
can
is
you
not
give
the
me,
typical bid turnaround of 5 days though, right?
I don't know. This is the first I've heard of it as far as the length of time I have to put on accepting bids.
What do we have for standard, Diane?
We usually go more than that, but we had to cut his back because of the agenda. he originally had it coming back on Friday, which is, we couldn't do
We'll
that
make
and
it
get
for
the
this, right,
agenda.
right.
So I
It'll
told
be
him,
on the following.
either had to have it Wednesday or it would go on the following, so.
Yeah, I got no issue there.
I mean,
The fact
typically
is-
we do 2 weeks. That's what,
Minimum of
minimum of
two,
2
and
weeks.
the fact
Depends
is
on
'cause
what it is that you're bidding out. Yeah.
The other part, what I would actually say globally is that I'm pushing all of our department folks. The fact is, if you're asking for something to get completed before winter right now, you're a fool.
Yeah.
You're gonna pay 40% premium associated
Right.
with that, and you're gonna get one bid, so we're gonna be paying through the nose for it. Look at what you're actually asking for the time frame you're asking, then it's a reasonable ask of somebody that'd be willing to work for us.
Right.
The fact that, and I know we've done that, first time seeing it is that, 5 days turning it around is short, in my opinion.
Because right now, actually, I'm upfitting, I'm painting all the blades, all the plows right now.
Yeah,
They-
it's timely.
Yeah,
You gotta be busy of October, because it's gonna be potentially flying.
Pretty much. So as we're painting the headgear and the plows, we're actually upfitting each truck. So the headgear goes from the hoist right onto the truck right off, and they're staying mounted on till spring. But they haven't been painted since they were mounted on the truck new. So they're all looking pretty rusty, and
Right.
so that was the reason for me trying to get in so everything's done and everything's ready for.
It's tomorrow.
No, it's.
You never know, because they're calling
last
for
week in
snow in the
October last year,
mountains
it
now.
went quick,
Oh,
so
absolutely.
It could happen. Right.
Right.
It's October, man. It's Maine. Snow can happen anytime.
Yeah, it's going to happen this weekend in the hills, so
That's right.
it's not going to be too long.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor?
6-0, order passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item?
As ordinance 2019-195 to adopt the amendments to Chapter 14 General Assistance Maximums and Appendices as presented.
This
This
is
is
on,
first reading and a roll call vote is required.
Anybody see anything on there?
House cleaning, we do it every year.
Yeah.
It's not controllable for our standpoint. It's basically just a
It seemed pretty straightforward when I looked
make
at
a
it. too.
motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Nope.
Nope.
Roll call.
Oh,
right?
roll call.
Roll
You're
call.
right. Thank you, Chris. Keeping us honest.
Counselor
odd.
Lunt,
Yes.
Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle,
Yes.
Counselor Albert,
Yes.
Counselor Colby,
Yes.
Counselor Brunel,
Yes.
6-0. Order passed.
Next item.
Ordinance 2019-196, Chapter 2, Article 5, Division 2, Finance Committee, Sections 2-505 to 2-509. First reading, roll call vote required.
Make a motion to discuss.
I'll second for discussion.
I think it's going to be kind of a work in progress. I think we have a good start, and I'm not sure where everybody else falls, but I think we could kind of keep tweaking it, but eventually we just got to roll with it and kind of make adjustments as we go. I know there was a discussion about the idea of picking a particular day, but actually being a little more flexible for the committee. When we move forward, I think it will be helpful for us as a council to actually kind of set the pace for the first year. We talked about the idea of having monthly meetings, but I mean, to me, it's really nice if we can get a group that can meet every time we do a budget workshop to actually be right in the groove. I mean, to me, that'd be really good. So I'd hate to actually make them actually do multiple nights of the month beyond, what we do, but because our agenda is pretty full during that budget season. So I think if we can move forward with the way it's written, and then, if we see changes need to be done, we always can amend it as we move forward, right?
Yeah.
After we get going with it.
I did hear back from Dr. Green, and he said the only concern that he had was the RFP requirement.
Yep.
And then he preferred Monday nights because that's the night he usually has his meetings, school committee meetings. So he prefers the Monday night.
He had no issue with the content associated with putting the finance committee on for the tasks that were assigned?
He didn't.
Good.
I got
Good. That
an
was- that
email
was-
from him.
So this is the revised, because I see it looks like you've stricken as proposed by the town manager, so basically taken some of those advisements from Dr. Green and the school side of the house to pull that out, as it affects the RFP.
Oh, that's what
That's what we had
Alan wanted
suggested.
last time.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, I know I saw
Oh, the
that.
RFP part was,
Yeah, yeah.
we took out the
Bids.
We took out the bids and bid specifications, and then the review is by
Yeah,
the town manager for the request for proposals for review whenever the town manager felt it. I mean, I wouldn't do that with his stuff, it's only mine, but we could add town manager or
That's why I
superintendent.
was looking at those kind of
Yeah,
things.
so I think that maybe that if we clear that language up a little bit, because I think that we all know how we've got previously in the past with the charter and the language and how that can be interpreted in several
So
different
if we
ways.
add superintendent there, then it would be on his request that they review his proposals.
How do we feel about that?
So someone,
Clarification question. The fact is, my understanding is we make changes to the content of the wording tonight that actually cannot happen.
Right.
If I am very much comfortable in that because I have several other revisions now that I have a cleaner copy to be able to consider for that discussion. If looking at school being on board with this, which is good, because if we didn't have that at least determined tonight, I was going to motion the tables because I don't want to put something out there with anything referencing the school if they're not going to want that whatsoever.
I spoke with the school committee chair, and she had
Okay.
some concerns. I just said, we're at the point tonight where we're going to get together, and like we did last time, we were just driving discussion about this to get to an end point. We don't want to, as Fern mentioned, we don't want to we could do this all day, every day, but I think that we should definitely give it maybe one more pass before we do a first read.
If you don't mind, then I would go right down my list of suggestions if you guys are looking at it. And the fact is, take
We're
them
here.
for what they are.
Hey, we're here, let's go.
If you guys have the document, A, review and make recommendations to the town council on municipal and school annual operating budgets presented. I would put the
After,
on the presented. The fact that because where are we asking for them to actually provide the input at the beginning or
that's a great point.
give
Yeah,
us some
no,
sort of
I think-
placement of where, because the point that I'm trying to make is, do we want them to be expected to sit through all the budget workshops, or look at the one that actually comes from the finance director in the school the night that it's actually there, and make a recommendation from that content for us before they're physically adopted? You know, that said, trying to speak to the timing of when you want that to be done.
Thoughts? What are we feeling? Do we want to do it on the presented, or do we want them here for the workshops?
I don't want to exclude because I think it's. Mark and I sit through county for a reason.
Right.
They irritated me last Wednesday, but they're going to irritate me any given Wednesday. So.
And I don't think it should be an either or, since when we look at the language of the of this, we're talking about you got to be at least at half the meetings to be in good standing. Well, so that means you could be attending the individual workshops and then bringing them back to the meeting. So there's more.
Right.
There's more work there involved in itself. So just in thinking of that, I agree. I don't think I want to make it an either or prospect. And I certainly think presented fits right in that spot. That way, I want them looking at existing and looking ahead. I don't want it to be line item. I don't want them to have to get into the weeds if they don't have to. I want them to be looking at the big picture and how it relates to what our long-term plans are. That's my thoughts on this. Please tell me what yours are if you think it's different. But I think the idea is that they're helping us look at what's existing and in front of us and how that ties into our long-term CIPs and other visions that we might have so that we can anticipate cost, expense, growth, things like that. Maybe that's pie in the sky, but at least that's what I was thinking. It'd be nice to have those sort of projections, even if they get blown up by something that comes in at an expense we didn't expect.
If you're looking for a committee to actually meet once a month to actually have the input, I think absorbing what you're actually getting from a presentation in a summary format to make a recommendation on that content, that's within their wheelhouse. If they ask for more detail, provide it.
Right.
But don't have an expectation that they're going to do beyond that until we get our feeding underneath us.
Okay.
That's my suggestion. B.
I think we have to be realistic about what we can expect from volunteers who are, doing this and they're not being paid to do it. If we really want projections ahead, we probably need to pay a, financial planner or something to look at that help us with that as like an auditor situation rather than, as Ellen and I sit through combing through those budgets at the county level, it's like we're going through what they've already produced and we're trying to make sure, does this make sense? But, I'm not paid to spend another 8 hours outside that trying to do additional, financial planning or something.
No, and I think probably my scope was a little broad there. But I think more importantly in thinking when they're looking at the existing, what we have for a budget, understanding that we're gonna allude to this correlates to this project, which might be 2 years out. So the Route 196 plan for Main Street or the 125 plan, whatever, that sort of thing. Just keeping that in mind and understanding how we're adjusting for cost because the project keeps getting pushed out or whatever. Just an example.
I think we have to,
I agree.
We have to be careful of the situation we have at the county where we basically have two boards that are trying to do a budget and they can be, at each other's throats sometimes in the past. And it's like, I don't want to create that situation where we have this board and another board dueling over priorities of how many policemen we have or, how many teachers in the schools or something, because
Careful
that's
selection.
really what we're elected to do in this boards.
Right.
We want to make sure it's clear to that board, don't try to be telling us political priorities.
Well, that'll be on us to set tone to.
More so as they
Councilor
actually have a
Lershell's
feeling
point.
that they're actually providing something that has value.
Mhm.
I mean, one of the perceptions of the budget committee at the county level is the fact is it has no value because nothing that you actually make for a recommendation is binding on the commissioners. That was like a fart in church last Wednesday when that came out.
Right.
It's a working relationship with the commissioners, but you can't hold this hand, you can't bind the hands of the commissioners that come after these folks, same as anything here.
Right.
So before we push this forward, I'm just going to ask this question: do we still want to do this?
Yeah,
Okay.
it has value. The fact is, if we had a finance committee, the fact is, I think that we would be able to start better collect some of the information associated with all the information we got for free 2 weeks ago on the solid waste discussion. I think that's a 6-figure increase over the last 2 years. We got people's attention. What are we going to do with it next? I think it's a perfect opportunity for us.
Anyone else? Opinions on this?
Maybe, Alan, you said you had a few more things?
I do, if you don't mind. I had trouble with trying to see how B differed from J. Review and make recommendations on the annual capital expenditures as presented by the town manager and finance director versus participate and make recommendations on the capital improvement plan. Frankly, I cut J right out of the list and just changed B to read annual capital improvement plan and just cut to the chase.
So the
Unless
difference
they-
between the two was the expenditure. The plan's not, the plan is the plan. It may be funded, it may be not, but the expenditure is the actual capital expenditure that we might incur.
That's fine.
That's why it's different. Two different things. But if you don't want the
If you-
expenditure part, then
Yeah, in that regard,
Well, we
they're weighing in on that because it's either budgeted or it's not. I see it coming from that part of it.
Yeah.
So that would be part of the budget review, in my opinion. So
Would they, sorry, I mean to
No, go.
cut in. Yeah, just
No,
ask
please
that.
do. Yeah.
Do you see them with this having an opportunity, as we've done in the past, which we've had in years past, we haven't, in the last couple of years, we've had an opportunity where capital improvements, actually, some have taken out undesignated funds. And there's always that balance. And do you see them weighing in on that? Whether that's because it's always presented every year as in the budget saying, if we have the money to pay up front versus the idea of bringing it on to the taxation. I mean,
I could see a potential if you get the right group of people. The county's getting free advice from us at the budget level. The fact is their fund balance policy doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The fact that, telling us that they have to continually raise more money to increase their fund balance actually falls on the fact is it's now 5.25% that we're actually looking at every year. The fact is you're telling me there's cushion in your budget because you're overtaxing us from your needs. That's not what it's intended to be.
So I guess the next question would be is, and maybe with you and Diane, I mean, with thinking of this committee, is this something that before we'd even get to the council's level of actually approving and not approving it, that you actually run something like this by the finance committee saying, look, this year we actually have a healthy reserve and we can actually help drop the tax rate or the commitment by the idea of using these undesignated funds to do these capital expenditures, whether it's a salt shed or something else. I mean, I'm dreaming here, but before it came to council, I guess going back to what Alan says, at what level do they actually interject the idea of actually making the recommendations to council? I would hate to think it's after we've already discussed it.
Right.
And actually made a plan, but.
Again, does it add value? When
Yeah.
is the timing of when it's going
Yeah.
to be here? You had something, Diane.
I was just going to say I don't know. I can't answer that because when I'm working on that capital improvement list that might come from unassigned fund balance, I'm doing that right along with the budget. And I'm working right up until almost that last minute that I get it out to you to get that done. And to do it any sooner than that with another group, I would never be able to make that deadline because it's a time-consuming process.
But maybe, as Alan was alluding to earlier, maybe it could be the idea of they sit and actually hear that presentation and actually make a recommendation whether they feel, even though they're not discussing it, it's basically more just a recommendation.
Right.
As a finance committee, we actually looked at our undesignated account, and we actually meet the certain criteria. We still have enough money in there. And, just the idea of it coming forward so the council can say, yes, this is a great idea, and it's actually been reviewed. Not saying, but again, it's one of those things where checks and balances, I guess, where that comes into. But.
Or you could front end it and actually have that be when you're sitting down with the department heads before the expectation there is that getting the input with the department heads and the finance committee together in one spot. Something of that nature too. But what's the end game?
I think the first year would be a trial and error. I think it would actually have to see where things fit in, and then from there, see what works.
Yeah.
Clear vision. I think the clear vision, like you said, getting everybody on the front end, saying this is what we're trying to or would like to look at a little bit closer, and then making sure department heads come together with the finance committee to talk about this is what we're looking at. What does it look like from where you're sitting? I'm going to pick on you because you're sitting in here. Randy will bring what he has to the table and saying, if this is the vision we're going for, this is what I see in my budget that we'll use the cut, for example. If we're looking to try to shave some off the budget that we can pull some padding out, if that was an opportunity for this budget, looking at everything you have in front of you, how that could happen. Because normally we build the budget based on what we like to believe, but not necessarily pie in the sky, but looking at everything and being realistic about increases based on what we think will happen for our cost. But then from there, trying to be realistic about it. If it's not there, it's not there. But you bring it to the finance committee. Maybe some departments have a little bit more because spending isn't as great than others. But we won't know until we talk about it.
So would you want to do?
See a definitive difference between expenditure and the capital improvement plan? If you
I do. I do because
I would leave it as you've gotten it.
Okay.
I have a question for Alan. How does it work in Lewiston, where you guys have a finance committee there, right?
They get the budget the same time that the information goes to the council.
Okay.
And the finance committee and the planning board are to make recommendations on the preliminary budget before it actually goes through the workshop process. So that said, it requires a month ahead of time. The fact is, well, you got here's your it's department submissions. Going through the department submissions, then as we vet it through either the town manager or the council, it's weighing in what you're getting for consideration from the finance committee and planning boards there.
With the logical, this is just spitballing, with the logical step then, because right now, last year, Diane vetted before it brought it to us. So would it make sense to try to pop that finance committee in between that vetting process with Diane? So it'd be the first step, or would it be better to ask that?
It's a good possibility. So because it's the place that Diane has the most slack in the line to be able to present. The fact is she's got a prelim budget. The fact is the prelim budget, and she's making the recommendation and presentation to us in the same time frame. If it's coming from an external source, the fact is it may weigh into what we ultimately address during the workshop presentations to be taking care of it right then. That would be the intent.
Yeah.
How that actually plays out with us locally would be the challenge the first year.
Right.
Yeah.
You give them a deadline. The fact is ours is February 15th is their extra mine on the budget, or in capital improvement plan is the first business meeting in January. In fact, is you have until then to get back to us on the capital improvement plan.
If I may, I mean, I could see it as being, the first year as being as simple as them actually listening to the same information we do in concert, in a sense, so to speak, listening at the same time. And then prior to the idea of going to public hearing, just giving their recommendation whether they support it or not. So at the public hearing, it can be, the finance committee is actually reviewed and actually feels that the budget is presentable as is, and then the council would actually back that up. I mean, not so much the idea of making extra steps, but only if needed, I guess.
Right.
I mean, I don't see it. I wouldn't want to make it complicated because it would be complicated for everybody. I mean, I think working along with us.
I don't disagree, because it's a good shopping list of what we're asking them to do. The budget is one small piece of it throughout the course of the entire year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, just the hope would be is actually, if once we get a committee that's actually productive, that a lot of the stuff that we're actually going to be discussing in budget season has already been vented through the year, right? If we actually have a concern, whether it's capital improvement, a big one like a salt shed or something, that's discussed way earlier, and it has recommendations, and then when it comes to budget season, it's already
Right.
it's already in a group.
Randy doesn't have to be doing his thing in a vacuum before we hear about the salt shed again. In
Gotcha.
fact, he got somebody to weigh this off of. Right. E, point of order, I guess. The fact is, if it's an ad hoc committee of the council, shouldn't that be review as requested by the town council instead of town manager? Who's directing that?
Well, you don't typically get involved in requests for proposals. That's done at our level.
So we're reviewing the proposals that are actually coming back in. They're not doing anything before that, correct?
I think you'd bog down the process too much if you required the council to sign off on it and then give the finance committee something and then have it go to RFP. It'd be months to get a turnaround on anything.
I look at this as if you had something that was really complicated, a request for proposal, then it would come in, and then I might want to convene the finance committee to look at it before we make our recommendation to council.
What's the school's process right now? Is that going to encumber or hinder them? Are we throwing up roadblocks, I guess is my ask.
No, if all we have to do is add superintendent to this, and it says review as requested by the town manager and
that was where I was
superintendent.
landing. What's the intent? Are we
Right.
asking them to, are they, in Lewiston, all awards are actually made by the finance committee. I do not believe that is the case. We're still here, we're tasked with that by our charter, the way that it recommends, but it gives you a sounding board before it gets to us for the vetting.
Right, if you want it and if you need it. This doesn't require you to do it, it's only
Right.
at
if you need it.
request.
So I think then like you said, if the simple change to the language, adding the superintendent makes sense.
Right, because I wouldn't be doing that for his.
Right,
So,
right.
and that was something I missed the first time around, that should have been in there. That's my fault.
As an example, say if
Makes
they
sense,
actually
though,
have like
in
a
that
first
language.
step to the Performing Arts Center, and they're actually trying to weigh that through, and they go into the facilities committee, they may actually run it to the finance committee before it actually comes.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't adding more hoops to an already existing process that
No.
the school had. That's it.
It's upon request by either me or the superintendent.
Perfect.
Next.
G, how much are we expecting somebody to get into the investments of the town? And where do we cross the line?
I don't actually,
If you don't see it
we
doing it,
could probably strike that,
that's my recommendation.
because it's pretty clear in the charter who's responsible for the investments.
Right, and why pay that person to do it if we're going
Right.
to have a committee do it for you?
Right, so
In
we'll
fact, you're
strike that.
micromanaging at that point.
Yeah.
Review annual audit findings as presented by the auditor, not as proposed. I don't care what he proposes, he's presenting it to you. And you might even consider if you want them actually part of the exit interview. I would say no, because you still need to respond to it.
Right,
They actually find, but
right.
at least they presented that information for feedback. L, I put advisable by town council on the end of that one to bring it back, because I think that the solid waste discussion 2 weeks ago would be a perfect example. It's one of those special topics, who's going to actually set, or school committee, put both of those in there.
That it?
That was it. It was just wordsmithing
Sure.
because it's just.
It's good. I mean, it's one of those things that is good to get it right. I mean, unfortunately, I think we'll be adding and subtracting as we go along.
No, I agree, and I just, if it push back 2 weeks, I think it's better than actually finding that it's a problem and then having it stricken and removed and keep playing with what we're actually setting up for the group to start with.
May I, you mentioned that the chair of the school board had a couple concerns.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Okay, so they've been addressed. Okay.
Yeah, we've talked about them.
All right, as long as they've been addressed.
Thank you, though. I appreciate you bringing that forward. Anybody else with anything else on this? Revisions?
Do you want to withdraw your motion, Fern, and you're okay with withdrawing
Yes,
it?
that would be great. We will
Councilor
withdraw
Albert?
and we'll table for
Okay.
the revisions to be completed and bring to next session.
All right.
Please and thank you. So next item.
Is other business? Council committee reports.
So it starts with me, so I will say at this time, there's no new news on school committee stuff. Next up, forgive me, I'm still looking at the finance committee, getting into the agenda.
Planning board.
Thank you, buddy.
There was a discussion for home daycare for Amber Roy in the Wing Street area, and expansion of the Grimmel's Trailer Park. At this point, they're looking to add 16 additional lots with a planned 14 in a future stage, but it's not part of this application. That was kind of their mini version of the solid waste discussion. They had a full house and a lot of discussion associated with runoff from the park, infrastructure of the park. An interesting observation from me was from Bill, water quality on the Pinewoods Road, people taking criticism for our infrastructure when it could be what's in the park. So they're fielding those kind of things. That was tabled at the planning board, and Grimmel's will be coming back at the next meeting to reconsider their proposal. At that point, they're hopeful to have DEP permitting in place for a plan before they approve it.
Okay. LDC.
If I could, Scott's here tonight as the chair of the LDC, and we just last meeting we kind of talked about a few different things. We had an update from the idea of the Graziano Square project and the idea of the Arumbo site, and Scott just has a short letter to present, and then we can discuss a little bit more if you like.
Good evening, Council. Tonight I come before you with kind of a heavy heart. We're missing a Lisbon Development Committee member, Karen Paradise. She's contributed a lot to this community, and she will be remembered and she will be missed. That said, the last time I came before you, I was asking for some funding, and we had a plan for the Graziano Park. I can speak somewhat intelligently on that, but maybe later. But tonight I'd like to talk to you about the pretty incredible opportunity that we have tonight when it comes to the development of the Warumbo site. And Lisbon Development Committee has a lot of very sharp people. We're a very diverse group. We came up with a lot of really, really good ideas. But first things first, I asked a little help from my friends, try and come up with some talking points that I can present to you tonight. And I surely wasn't disappointed. And, I'm just going to take the easy way out and go ahead and try and read this verbatim.
Sure.
Now, the Warumbo site, of course, we all know it's located at 196 in Main Street in Lisbon Falls, Canal Street. It approximately has 4 acres of developable property There's actually a little bit more acreage, but it all depends on the water height of the river. The LDC recognizes this parcel. It would be best suited to serve as a multi-use green space with scenic views of the river, overflow parking for downtown, and an opportunity for recreation. Okay. The downtown needs additional parking, especially during periodic events such as the Moxie Festival. The town would serve the parking needs of downtown in addition to becoming a prime location for like farmers markets and other type of periodic events. The LDC would like to establish a development plan and schematic design that would be accomplished in phases over multiple years. Incremental development of the parcel would include a mitigation plan to handle any type of hazardous materials that happen to be on site. And then, and also we'd like to include timetables, milestones, periodic updates for the town council. And funding sources may include private donations for specific projects and proceeds from the downtown TIF. The LDC is looking for the council's concurrence to proceed with the next steps to create a development plan for the Rumble Mill site and Lisbon's future downtown waterfront park. So for the most part, we're basically looking for the go-ahead, you know. And there's a couple more things I'd like to add. Judging from my experience, I think it's crucial that we become very good neighbors with Eagle Creek, the people that own the hydro. If we can get them to cooperate and work with us, I think it would be a lot less painful. And of course, coming my background from the planning board and the committee, you know, I'm quite sure that any type of development we do down at the park, it's going to dovetail seamlessly with our newly minted comprehensive plan. The latest changes to our public access ordinances, and also our 196 corridor plan.
Thank you, Scott.
Anybody have any questions?
The and just to kind of go along with that, and the committee actually has a lot of neat ideas, but I think it's rational to think that the idea of meeting the needs, as Scott mentioned, the idea of the parking for downtown is really crucial, and the idea of that green space. The plan of the committee, and just kind of going back to what Scott just mentioned, would be the idea of very much like we did on Graziano Square, where we actually, within the group, we come up with a basic design of just ideas, try to put that on paper, then actually get an opportunity for the public to put some input to see what it looks like, and just come up with a kind of a in-house version of what could be there, and then try to come up with some type of plan how we can actually put it into action. It's a great space. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity. I think what we got for feedback from the Brownfield grant was actually awesome. I mean, the idea of the site's a clean site, so to speak, for a mill site, and I think it's a great opportunity. And just kind of talking with the Eagle Creek, I think they're definitely excited about what could happen down there as we are, so it's good.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. We're going to be looking at the low-hanging fruit right off the bat.
Go ahead.
One of the questions that I have on this property, going through the entire process, comp plan, all the discussions that we've had at this level, is addressing the immediate needs and then long-term needs. An ability to control the development of what that site ultimately ends up as. We get to have a hand in that. With the understanding that if somebody comes in with a heck of a bigger vision and pocket, that ultimately may play a hand into that. I don't know if green space would be the final version of where this ultimately lands. I don't want to bind in that. I don't want to bruise anybody's feelings in that process too, but it is 4 acres, that it's on the river, that if somebody actually came to us with a plan, then what would be consideration for that?
Exactly in that place. I feel like with the Graziano Square, we had limited options with that. There were obviously some pretty significant challenges with the comp plan and the way that lot is laid out for somebody to come in here and drop a business in. So I think the green space was a viable opportunity for us to be able to take something that had been kind of an eyesore and turn it into something that would be maybe a gateway to get some more folks up in that area. I am not completely opposed to a green space, but I certainly would say that's low on my list of things that I want to see there. I would say that I want to go ahead and talk about when we were looking at that piece of property and trying to consider how we were going to manage it. The thought process was if it came back and we didn't expect the report we were going to get back. So we expected something a little less favorable, but at least the vision was we'll cap it, we'll use it for parking if it comes back the way we think it's going to come back. And at least that way we could control how that looks and what's going on in that corner. But now with a bunch more options, and we just got that report in, I am a big fan of pumping the brakes on doing anything as far as talking about where we want to go until we get a little bit better understanding of maybe and I know what LDC is talking about is just that, getting a bunch of ideas together and saying what's what. But I think that we should learn from what happened with.
Well, to be fair, I mean, in that regard, it has limited development. We heard that clearly.
Right.
The fact is, but we're not misrepresenting that to somebody that comes in with that vision. The fact is, if it works within that scope, I don't want to tie the hands because we've committed. We had this discussion a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about donations. Yeah, I'm all for it, but I don't want to be making commitments to people for checks written for a specific intended purpose when I don't know where it ultimately lands. That's the reality.
Getting things out there, yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
If I may, a couple of things that the committee's talked about, and I know Diane's actually weighed in also, is not. One of the things we have to be careful with is if we were to get a federal grant to actually be able to do anything that actually would tie our hands for future resale.
Right.
Once we do that. I think two key things came out of the meeting that we had the other night is where the building was, where we intend to do, say, a parking for now, because, it's kind of what we need. We talked about the idea of how awful it would be to have any structure in that area to the point of we just took down a white building and now we actually have the view of the river. To actually think that it would actually put any permanent structure in that location to actually take away from the idea of the vista of the river, but yet not saying that other parts of that property aren't more acceptable to the idea of building on. I think what Scott was actually laying out was actually we have a very until we actually have monies ourselves, which we have to figure out. I mean, there's a very small portion of that property that's actually very usable for us right now. Matter of fact, what you see open right now is actually what we actually have to work with until we actually come up with some substantial funding or long-term vision. So, the idea of parking and green space, we basically have about 1.5 acres right now, and not even quite that of actually usable space. And pretty much if you were to say, and again, this was all just talk and design, was the idea if you start taking 50 to 75 car parking area, that would take 3/4 of that lot pretty much in a sense. You'd actually have a little bit of green space, but it's basically just surrounding the parking lot. So again, it's one of those things where I don't think we're going to tie our hands, and I think the idea of actually leaving anything open, but with that being said, the biggest thing would be the idea of just be careful what type of funding we use there so we don't tie our hands in the future. But if the community actually, through some of the visioning that we have, really thinks that really ought to be more of a town space, the idea of we could get a $300,000 grant to do something there, I mean, that's not unreasonable either if we can make it work. I think some of the ideas coming through is the idea of laying out the property and what actually is there for usable space and practicalities. What is in resource protection versus flood zone, how close to the river it is, what is usable, how about much the setbacks are. I think all that actually just has to be played out. And I think the purpose of tonight was more
Informational.
just for just for the LDC to come forward and give the council an idea that, you know, they'd like to continue talking about it, and the only way to do that is make sure the council is on board and that the public actually is aware of what's happening. I think we're a long ways away from actually making many decisions, and ultimately the council, whoever the council will be at the time, will actually will make those decisions, what comes forward. One of the things that we did have an opportunity to do is during Moxie Day, we actually had put a whiteboard out there with with open discussion. You know, what would you do? You know what I mean, there was a lot of interesting input there. You know what I mean, and you know, Burger Kings and dog parks, you know, of course, but you know,
all the old favorites, right?
Just teasing. No, there was a lot of interesting thoughts, and I think what we really need to do is go back, as Alan mentioned, is look at some of the comprehensive plans and downtown planning that we've had in the past, and actually look to see what the thought of the, you know, people of years ago wanted to do with that. As much as, you know, the end goal of owning the property we have actually achieved, which is a major milestone. How we go about it and not tie our hands to the point of restricting what we do is actually the key factor.
Yeah, to
Agreed.
add,
One step further too is that in getting that great report, there was talk about V-wrapping that one area that had some of that contamination. And I know there was also some suggestion that even though we couldn't use the funding that we had existing for the cleanup, we didn't really, you know, we didn't get our arms around what that cleanup number would look like. Because what's it going to take, and just again, since we're in this space, what would it take to clean that up so that the entire, instead of having just the existing that's there right now for use, what would it take to clean the whole thing up?
And that's what I mentioned to Diane coming into the meeting would be the idea we have to put a fence up, which fences are not cheap, but they're not, I mean, they do add costs, you know. If to get somebody on site and actually say, hey, look, this is a rebel and this is what the cleanup would be. There are some questions that actually need to be answered once we get a contractors in there, but I mean, to me, it's not unreasonable to think that we put it out to bid, the idea of having people go down and look at it and say, what does it take to get all the debris out of here in this level versus the idea what it would cost us to put a fence up. Not that the fence is, again, crazy money, but it's still dollars that actually we tear down if we ever have it cleaned up. So
Some cost rather than addressing it.
is it? So
That's exactly it. And thinking back to that report as well, that's the key there, is that we know what is going on. So it just becomes a matter of, do we want to spend the money so that we can get the, I think it was DEP or EP, I can't remember which one it was, he said, will give us the certification, so the certification of liability, is that what it was? I'm trying to recall.
DEP is the police for the EPA.
All right, so it's too late for me to start working with acronyms. But anyhow, the idea is that if we're going to consider, well, we want to get this certification because it's an important piece of this puzzle for this piece, and all we have to do is fence something out. That was the goal. But I would rather at least discuss and see if if it's feasible to try to clean that up. Because we clean it up and it changes. It's a game changer as far as what we can do.
it's all, as far as I'm concerned, that comes down to the idea of actually just Randy understanding what's out there and putting out a bid process where we actually have people come in, they look at it, they see what's there. Some of the questions that came up the other night, well, Chris Houston was on the committee, he was mentioning the idea of, you know, some things DEP wants you to haul off and bury somewhere else, some things you actually can bury on site. If there's actually, you know, some of the material there, if it actually can be buried and capped on site, I mean, that's, again, but the end use is actually kind of a factor also, but yet it may shock us. There may be, as Chris said, there may be a lot of material that's useful for somebody somewhere else. I mean, some of that bigger fill may be actually not just, it may not be all wasted stuff you have to pay to get hauled off. You know what I mean? There may be some gravel, there may be some processing there. A lot of people get big pieces like that to crush them up to make material. So again, it's one of those things where I think looking at it and actually coming up with a plan and having someone like Randy actually meet some people there and put out a bid spec saying, we have this property, we want it cleaned, get bids. I mean, it may scare the heck out of us, but yet at the end of the day, you don't know until you ask.
Well, we have a partner who can steer us in the right direction.
So TRC got back to me.
Yep.
And we can use the brownfields funds to do the VRAP application.
Awesome.
So I told them to go ahead and do that. And also the removal of the monitoring wells.
Excellent. Good.
And we can use it for temporary fencing around that area we're talking about.
Wow.
It can't be permanent, it has to be temporary. So that means whatever we put in there is gonna come down at some point.
Temporary fencing
still,
might
that
be
will
pretty
buy us some
permanent,
time.
right?
So I'll explore that more. What's that?
Come down. Even a permanent fence, by definition, is eventually gonna come down.
Right, but if you
Might-
want me to look into that further, I will, but it will, we can use brownfield funds.
Temporary fencing or any, is that actually mounted in cement or?
Yeah, that's correct. Permanent is mounted, with drilled holes, concrete. The other's driven post, no top rail, just tension wire.
Yeah.
So it's just a
It's a
cheaper.
perimeter fence.
Just winner chicken dinner right there.
Yeah, I think we have a short-term fix and it costs us
That's very
that
cool.
many dollars.
That's awesome.
Which is fantastic. And then we can meet,
Then
can meet
address
and get that certification of liability while we decide, or at least get some numbers around what it would look like to do the whole enchilada.
I just know Mark's taking down all the fence from LCS, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
the community center.
Yep.
Oh, interesting.
So all that fence is coming down. The wire is reusable, but it's temporary.
Everything at the MTM Center. Everything at the MTM Center is what he's referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
But if we have an opportunity to use some grant money that may go away if we don't use it,
Yep.
to do that.
And we only have a short period of time to use it, and it is going away.
Yeah, so I mean, that's,
I got an extension for a year, but we're into what?
is that material?
Doing
and
that,
labor?
I'm sure we could
That's
always
stuff I
reuse
think
the
now.
fence if we decided to clean up too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So I,
We've got about, I think it's
as an
around
action item, is it
70,000 left
appropriate
to
to be
spend.
able to make a motion to actually let our public works director put together a bid for temporary fencing?
I think you're making the motion?
I'd make the motion
do
if
we
we have the
need,
ability to
do
use
we
it.
need to do that if they're actually?
I don't know, I gotta
Taking-
call, I gotta find out.
Yeah.
I just found out late last week, and I wanted to talk to you about it.
I would
That's
actually
the-
second that motion.
That's the
just
way
in
you
case.
wanna go, I wanna.
So let's
I
may
modify
not
my
have to-
motion, conditional agreement with, we can actually do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I was saying, we'll put the cart before the horse a little
So
bit
that
here.
empowers
And we'll
our-
pass this before
Right.
Diane
The
gets the green
condition.
light.
We
Yes.
have to go that route, then at least we've got the okay to do it then.
Okay, we got a first, we got a second. You heard as amended, right, Twyla?
Yep.
Restate the motion.
Sure.
So
So,
motion allowing our public works director to go out for bid for temporary fencing for the location.
I would
subject to
just say
approval.
the town go out to bid, don't,
Town.
please, yeah,
Town.
just in case somebody might want.
contingent upon,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It'll be a fun.
Yeah, Randy,
that puts you in an
Oh,
option.
Yeah, exactly.
the brownfield funds are available contingent upon the brownfield funds.
Yeah, well, we know they're available.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we can use it, but it's,
Subject to approval for the funding.
Okay.
how's that
Just
for an
gotta find
amended
out what
motion,
the-
huh?
I interrupted you 4 times. Did you have something?
It's okay. No, I I understand and I pretty much agree with all your concerns.
Well, thank you for
Yeah.
generating such a kind of a robust and vigorous conversation about this tonight.
Well, from a community and economic development standpoint, it's a diamond in the rough, okay, and the possibilities are endless, okay, and when it comes to crafting a plan going forward, there is strength and flexibility. That's the last I'd like to leave with you with.
Do we,
Zip wires across the river,
could be lots of things, right?
just like Vegas.
Yeah, there we go.
All the way down. Do we, I mean, is it unreasonable at this point in time to think that we would actually get Randy to, if he has an opportunity, I mean, do the town manager to get ideas what it would cost to actually have the debris removed? I mean, is that something we can move forward with at this point?
You can get free advice,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, it'd be nice to know moving, going into it, you mean?
Would our partners at, what is it, TRC?
Yeah,
Yeah, would they be able to give us a lead on where we could find out what that cost might be?
Actually, Randy could actually get,
Yeah, I
it's
bet
actually gonna
Randy
have to
could
be a
use
local
Randy.
contractor, yeah.
there's a lot of stuff we can do ourselves, I think, the Public Works. There's some cleanup down there along the pathway.
I just
A
know,
lot of stuff, it's not that other debris pile, but it's, that we really need to get cleaned up.
I'm talking about the stuff that we're putting a temp fence around too, that. I'm talking about making it all.
Oh, that. Oh, to
Every,
get a,
yeah.
All the debris.
I would,
get-
I wanna go through TRC and
That's what
find
I-
out
that's
who
why.
we need to give us a record,
Perfect.
because it's gotta be somebody that's used to asbestos and knows exactly
He
what they're
mentioned that.
looking at, and then they would know approximately how much the cost of disposal for that
I
type of.
think getting a number around
Hazardous
mitigating
material.
that would be
Yeah.
a good idea.
100,000 or $1 million.
I think the question would be, is they were,
How about 10,000? Jeez,
they
I'm
were
worried.
unsure what type of material. They actually just had
Asbestos,
small samples, what was there. It actually could be, I mean, it's one of those things where.
so you can't take it anymore.
Yeah, a lot of it was actually, there's a lot of debris there. But they were concerned about some of the shingles came off some of the older buildings. But
Take
I
a
think we
breath.
have multiple sources, but either
Andy?
way, it's a good discussion, if nothing else.
Okay.
So your
You don't
vote
know,
is just for the temporary fencing, correct?
You'll get through it.
Not the debris removal.
What was
I think,
that?
Your bid bid is just for the temporary fencing, subject to the approval of the funding, not
Correct.
the debris removal.
Correct, the
That's
rest,
different.
the rest he can do without any formalized motion.
Yeah, and I think he can work at RTC too and actually make that as all one package, I mean, so.
Yeah. With the intent, the fact is that fence doesn't have to go up this fall, but the fact that it goes
I think
out now with
What
spring completion.
she's mentioning with the brownfields money is gonna be running out, so we need to get it done before. a
She said
certain
9
time.
months,
Yeah,
Yeah.
which, so
There's-
that could be
there's your-
spring.
There's
Yeah.
your target date.
springtime,
Before
that's
that time
it.
period.
July 1, whatever it is.
You know, just circling back around, you asked to have something up
Yep.
before Christmas right now, and you're gonna be paying through the nose for a temporary fence.
Right. I'll find out what the deadline is to spend the money.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you. Conservation Committee.
Do you want to vote?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Or to pass 6-0?
Forgot about Alan's motion. Now, Conservation.
Conservation Committee's riding high on a new program for composting. There's a lot of Facebook chatter, some of it positive, some of it not so much, but they're encouraged with the community support of the program and looking to work the logistics to make it work long-term
Adding some bins,
for
huh?
everybody.
All right, and then, we got recreation next.
Nothing to report.
County budget, heard a little bit earlier.
County tomorrow, we've cut 5,000 to date. Most anything that could be put off to the last minute for a final resolution is gone towards our last meeting date, and tomorrow night is all about the sheriff and jail.
Big ticket items.
May I ask a question on that?
Sure, go ahead.
The budget in jail, do they talk about the fees as far as for dispatching stuff in that particular part of the budget, or increases, not increases, or?
I will be following up the last night, and I asked on our opening as well as, did they take the advice that if you have contracts in play for dispatching, are they annualized for the communities to be able to be offset for the increased cost of what that communication center actually entails? So, yes.
Because I knew they were actually adding some personnel and stuff, which would increase their operating.
Correct.
Which eventually they would have to increase their fees
Yep.
to actually do it, but.
It's, communications this go around is not adding the personnel, they added them last year, but the question is that they adjust the fees for those that are actually using the service. Anything, again, they take it upon advisement. I don't know if commissioners actually acted on it, but I will be that guy that asked.
I bet you will. Thank you.
Library.
Nothing to report.
All right, next item.
Town
Must be the
manager's
candy.
report.
So I reported on some, and the only other thing I have is we have about 6,100 left in the downtown revitalization grant, the 2016. So I talked to Dennis, and at this point, we feel the best way to spend the remaining funds is to go out to bid and get the trees removed on Booker Street, where we want to have that parking. We have to take down a lot of these trees. And Booker Street, I did send the map to DECD in Augusta, and she sanctioned it, but we have to do the formal bid process because of the grant funds. And I'm running out of time because I've got to spend it by December 1st. I really don't know what else to do at this point.
I would actually I would just make a recommendation that whatever we can do down there to between
Yeah.
cutting the trees and prepping the property and getting material to actually make those parking lots, if we can,
Yeah.
it'd be money wise. It's money we're gonna spend regardless, so we're better off using grant money than actually not, but.
Right?
Go.
We can spend it versus actually giving it back to them.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, one other thing.
We're not giving it back, man. We're spending it.
So, November 5th is the election, and that's a council meeting night, just like it was last year. And last year, we'd had one meeting in November, which was the second meeting. Is that what you'd like to do again this year?
And yes, and when
So
is
that'd be
your
the 12th?
when is your vacation?
I leave on the 21st.
So the 19th.
The 19th, like we proposed then.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's gonna be a challenge for me. I'm working nights that weekend. I'm not saying I can't, I'm not saying you guys can't have the meeting,
I hope it's not a weekend, the 19th.
I mean, the weekend, yeah. The Tuesday, the 19th, I work nights, and I'm not gonna be able to get out of that. I'm there, so I won't be able to be
Or
here.
do you want to do it the 12th instead?
I mean, you guys can roll on the 19th without me,
Fine.
but we can do it on the 12th.
12 works. The intent is actually to space the meetings out a little bit, that we're not having 4 weeks worth of stuff covered.
Right, so that
Right.
will
One
be,
meeting.
Yep,
Yes,
that'll
12th is
work.
fine.
November
About
12th.
Tuesdays open because just budget season seems to suck them all up. Perfect.
Thank
What do you mean, man? There's only one meeting a month.
Right.
One meeting. Maybe two.
During budget
3
season.
workshops. But,
November the 12th. All right.
All right, 12th it is.
Change
Woo-hoo.
the calendar.
you.
Next item is appointments. Order 2019-197, unappoint a civil constable.
Is he civil?
Anybody got anything on this?
We have a name?
We do. Steve Schwinard. Did you see any of the other paperwork? Well, there's a letter from Ace Security. And so we have his insurance certificate, and he'll be working with Ace Security.
we're good?
You're all good with that?
Yep, I think we're
Perfect.
good. Do we need to make a vote on that?
Motion? Mm-hmm.
I make a motion?
Second?
I'll second that.
And all those in favor? 6-0, and you have one more appointment. Order 2019-198 to appoint the warden for the November 5th election. And
Not again.
you know Rick
Not Roberts.
Roberts.
Mr.
I'll make
Roberts.
the motion.
Mr. Roberts.
All right, second.
Mr. Roberts. I'll second it.
All those in favor? Thank you. 6-0.
Arm got real heavy all of a sudden.
Next is council communications.
Okay, so I wanted to allude to what Scott, Mr. Hall, had mentioned earlier. I was very sad to hear of Karen Paradise passing. She definitely was somebody who was gave great service to this community in many different ways, and the community is a little less with her not being here anymore. So to her family, we want to offer our deepest condolences, and we want to thank you for all the times that you were without her because she was here working so tirelessly for this town, and we thank you very much for that. Anyone else?
Moxie report. It was supposed to come before us in September.
Right.
It's now October. Can you remind Mark and the committee, please? I know they had the debriefing.
Anyone else? Next item, please.
Audience participation and response for new items.
At this time, anyone who feels like they want to step to the podium, talk about anything?
Let's step over each other.
Yeah, all of you?
Seeing nobody?
Executive session order to adjourn.
Motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
In favor?
6-0.
Thank you all.
I did really want to thank the DEP for now allowing people to just walk down the bridge, walk right down to the back of anybody's property that lives along the river now. You don't need to take a canoe or nothing anymore. You can just sneak right up into my back property. Everybody else that lives along the river, too. Thanks, DEP.
For the record, I wouldn't advise people.
Correct. I do have game cameras, and I've seen everybody on.